Hey again, everybody. Hey, there was a big quote going out by Billy Joel, okay? And he was talking about the Beatles with Bill Maher. And Bill Maher is controversial too. And they discussed all kinds of things, Beatles. And what's been going around is the negative view that Billy Joel has of the Beatles' White Album from 1968. And I got to tell you something. Let me tell you where I stand with Billy Joel. First of all, I like Billy Joel. I consider myself a fan to a point. I like a lot of his music. And when I was going to high school, he was very popular. And he was on Long Island. It came from Long Island to New York. So I kind of like relate to that a lot. And I really think he's terrific. I think he's a great songwriter, a great lyricist. I think he's wrote some classic songs. So I like Billy Joel. And I know that Billy Joel is a huge Beatles fan. He's appeared with Paul on stage a number of times. He's like a big kid anytime he talks about the Beatles. He's covered some Beatles songs, okay? And I think he did I'll Cry Instead. And I think I remember back in the USSR, maybe, if memory serves. I'm trying to set up my general vibe for Billy. I remember there was a story he told about how he got to go to Paul McCartney's house once, and he was so in awe of meeting Paul. Oh, let me turn that back. I think Paul was coming to his house. That's the story, right? Paul McCartney was coming to Billy Joel's house, and Billy was so in awe of Paul that he wanted to make sure that he got rid of all the meat that was in the house, because Paul's a vegetarian and won't stand for meat, you know, meat-free Mondays and all that. So he wound up hiding the meat. And I think Billy Joel later said that after Paul had left, sometime after, he'd forgotten that he hid some of the meat and it started to spoil, where he smelled it through the house. But anyway, so that's why, with all this love for the Beatles and all this inspiration and appreciation that Billy Joel has, I was very shocked to hear him diss the Beatles' masterpiece known as the White Album, or just simply the Beatles, the double album. Now, look, there's a lot of opinions you can have of the White Album. Some people think it's too long. There are 30 or so songs, roughly, on the album. Some people think they should have just made it half an album, or just a single album, Instead of a double, just concentrate on a really powerful single album. Put me in the camp that loves the White Album just as it is. I love the versatility of it, how eclectic it is, how it's all over the map. There's all different kinds of styles on it. And the quote that I'm going to read from Billy Joel completely confounds me. I think Billy Joel not only put his foot in his mouth, but also his whole leg and maybe his arms and hands too. Okay, Billy Joel says, when talking about the White Album, quote, "I'm not a big fan of the White Album. I hear it as a collection of half-assed songs that they didn't finish writing because they were too stoned or they didn't care anymore." Then he goes on to say, "I think John Lennon was kind of disassociated somewhat at that point, and I think Paul McCartney was carrying the weight." Now, we all know that John started to write less and he started to zone out more, but I think on the White Album, John is pretty damn well represented. And he's got some great material and classic stuff on the White Album, John does. And so does Paul, so does George. Even Ringo has his first composition on there with Don't Pass Me By. I think the thing that gets me here is that Billy Joel is talking about songs that are half-assed or unfinished, and I don't know what Billy Joel was smoking. Did he ever listen to the White Album? I mean, I'm being facetious there. Did he ever listen to the White Album? It sounds to me like he listened to the White Album maybe only one time, and maybe was high as a kite and out of his mind, because if he thinks that all the songs on there are half-assed and they weren't finished, that may be the case for a couple of fragments on there. I mean, of course, we have Why Don't We Do It in the Road, which is not much. We have the infamous Wild Honey Pie. We have Revolution 9. That's the experimental track with all kinds of tape loops and noises and nonsense. But most of the 30 songs on there are definitely great songs and completed songs, finished songs, not half-assed songs. And I know there's people out there that are going to say inevitably, and I've heard people say it already in some places online. People have said, "Oh, God forbid you should ever criticize the Beatles. God forbid somebody should say that they don't love everything the Beatles ever did. Oh, people are not allowed to like something." I have no problem with Billy Joel not loving the White Album. Maybe it's not his favorite album. I would have no problem with Billy Joel saying that maybe he didn't like it because it's a truth fact that the Beatles didn't really play together on every song. There were some songs where they were doing their own tracks. Paul would do one, John would do one, George would do one, etc. Although there are tracks where they play together. And the irony is the title of the album is The Beatles, which is arguably, again, the least group effort that they've ever done. But it would be accurate for him to say, in my mind, I don't care for it because they're not really a band together on all the tracks. That's okay, you know? But when you say something incorrect, like saying the songs are half-assed or unfinished, that's not really fair or true. I mean, this album has plenty of finished tracks on there and some classics. This is off the top of my head. Back in the USSR. Billy knows that song. You must like that song, Billy, huh? You got that? What about Dear Prudence? What about While My Guitar Gently Weeps, one of George's all-time classic tracks? Okay, you've got Blackbird, Martha My Dear, Mother Nature's Son, Helter Skelter. I mean, I could go on forever. Long, Long, Long from George, Savoy Truffle. I mean, there are tons of tracks here. Rocky Raccoon. These are all unfinished songs? Just the half-ass attempts? I don't know what you're talking about, Billy, and I like your stuff. This is just bizarre to me. And I just figured, I've been wanting to make a video since I heard this a few days ago. It's all over the internet now, and it's getting kind of viral in a way. I don't know. What do you folks think? You know, is it the case? I certainly don't think so. There's certain things that are correct. There's an old saying, you're entitled to have your own opinion, but not your own facts. You know, your opinion is that this is not your favorite album. Fine. It doesn't have to be your favorite. It's one of mine. Sometimes I think the White Album at different times of the year, because I like all their albums, is my very favorite. Other times, something else, something earlier. John Lennon disassociated at this point? I'm not so sure about that. Happiness is a Warm Gun, Sexy Sadie, Your Blues, Julia. He's got some great stuff on there. The Continuing Story of Bungalow Bill. I'm So Tired. You know, Revolution 1. Really? Really? I don't know, Billy. I think you might have got to give this another listen or something like that. All right? And that's my 2.5 cents on this one, folks.